Welcome to another episode of Mysteries Unknown. I've got two of the strangest Class A Dogman encounters for you tonight that I've heard so far on this channel. Both of these encounters happen in North Carolina. The first one is with Steven, and Steven had a very strange encounter with one of these creatures while he was out hunting in the swamps of North Carolina. This creature paced him out of the woods, and he is very fortunate to be here to tell it. The second one we're going to get into is from a gentleman named Rick. And Rick shot one of these creatures when he was just a kid, before he knew anything about these things. And his story is really strange. We're going to dive into all of that. But before we do any of that, I just want to say thanks for being here and hanging out with me tonight. I couldn't do this channel without you, and I'm very, very grateful for all the support. And if you've got an encounter or a mystery you would like to send me, you can always send it to me at mysteriesunknownpodcast@gmail.com. But let's jump right into these stories.
This was November of '01. I was hog hunting. I was hunting wild hogs in the southernmost area of the Great Dismal Swamp, which is Pasquotank County, North Carolina. You know, it's populated, but in the area I was at, it's very, very sparsely populated. It's, you know, they called North Carolina the sportsman's paradise, and I agree with that, because you've got the beach, and then you've got all the water around that, lots of commercial fishing, lots of sport fishing. And I got into that. I was from Kentucky. I grew up in the woods hunting and fishing and riding dirt bikes and stuff. And after I moved here, the whole being able to go hunting out of a boat and stuff was really cool. I mean, not hunting in a boat, but taking a boat to get to remote hunting locations. I think I was maybe 19. I went hog hunting with some friends in what's called the estuaries in the ocean side of Currituck County. There's wild hogs up there, and I really got into it. I thought it was super fun. It was a good adrenaline rush. I'm a Gen X kid from the 90s, so I grew up with the whole extreme sports, adrenaline junkie, that whole kind of lifestyle. People ask me why I was hog hunting by myself, and that's the only answer I can get. I was like, it was a good rush. Looking back, I can't believe I never got gored or chomped on, because they can be aggressive. And the wild hogs here, they're not like you see out in Texas, where there's big giant packs of them. They're more they're not as rampant here as they are out there. And it was in 2001. We had the big hurricane a couple of years before that, and a lot of the hog farms, a lot of the pigs got killed, and a lot of them went wild and went feral. And there you could hunt them. There was no close season, no bag limit, because they were a nuisance. At the southernmost end where I was, it's just all wetland, marshland, and as far as the water goes, depending on how the wind's blowing and the tide is on any given day, low tide, high tide, northwest wind, you can actually walk through some big sections of it and not get too wet. The day I was there, it was about it was a lower tide, and the wind was out. It was a really, really dark, really overcast day. So I have some friends that live in where this is. There's an area called Weeksville, and there's a Coast Guard air base there. There's a road that runs from Elizabeth City, North Carolina, all the way down to the south end of Weeksville, and there's a little inlet of water between the Weeksville side and the other side, which is south of Nixonton, I think is the name of it. There's a body of water that goes up inland there called the Big Flatty Creek. And let's see, I put my boat in the water at a friend of mine's house that lived a good ways south of the Coast Guard base. Him and his family, they lived right up on the water. They had a homemade boat ramp there. You could put your boat in and out. I had it was like an 18 or 20 foot Carolina skiff. You know, it was nothing fancy. And I put it in there, and my buddy, where I put it in at, he's like, you know, where are you going? Tell me where you're going to. I was like, I'm just gonna go out and cruise around a little bit and find somewhere that looks dry enough I can get out and walk around. And looking back, I could tell that he was a little apprehensive of why I was gonna head that way. And he's like, just be careful, man. Again, he thought I was stupid for going hog hunting, by myself like that. And so I put my boat in the water at his house. I went south and came around and went west, and I pulled my boat up in on the east side of where the Big Flatty Creek comes down. I tied my boat up there and went in the water, or went into the swamp there. And November here, it can be pretty dark and pretty dreary. There's it'll be heavily overcast, and in the swamp there, it's not like it's not like just a regular forest. There's layers to the canopy in there, and in there on the floor, uh, it's really really dark in there. You don't have very far that you can see. It's and there's no given paths or anything like that. You're kind of it's easy to get lost. You definitely got to take a compass with you. I went in there. I just started kind of scouting around a little bit, looking for signs of hogs. I could see that there had been some in there at some point, but I'm not a amazing tracker. I couldn't tell how old it was. It looked like it had been a while since there'd been any um, fresh sign there. So I guess I was back in there, but probably about 45 minutes. I was maybe about a mile in, and I started picking up a scent. I thought it was a wild hog scent. If you've ever smelled a wild hog, they've got a really distinct smell. It's kind of like old pee and poo, and mixed with just a really musky, gross kind of smell. So I started picking up a scent, and then as it got a little bit stronger, I was like, that's not a hog. It smelled like an old outside dog that's been running through the woods and the swamp. That real strong wet dog smell. I started picking up on that, and I went in a little bit further. And keep in mind that it's still wet all around you. You kind of have to pick and choose your trails where you go through. There would be, ditches and canals that could be 5, 10 feet wide. You go down and then have to walk over and cross back around to get around them. And I started, I started hearing movement. I was like, okay, cool. I'm coming up on something. Maybe I'll end up getting to shoot one. And it was, I could tell it was probably maybe 50 yards away. And I noticed it kept going around me. And I finally started seeing movement. And I was like, that's not a hog. I don't know what that is. It's so dark, and you can't really see more than, 20, 30 feet in any given direction, but I'm seeing movement. And I started getting a little freaked out, because I was like, that's not a hog. It's not acting like a hog. I don't know what that is. So I keep going a little back, and then I start going in a little bit further, trying to figure out what it is, and I started, hearing like snuffling, like sniffing, snuffling, and I started hearing like a really low growl, like if your dog's ever looking out the window at night and they think they see something, they do that real rumbly low growl down low in their chest. And then I thought, holy, I really know that that's not a hog now. And see, bear in mind, this is, I didn't know what the heck a dog man was. I didn't believe in anything supernatural. I'd never heard of the cryptids that we all know about today. So the last thing I'm thinking it is, some big giant critter. I'm still, part of me still thinking it's a hog, but also at the same time, I can't tell what the heck it is. And I'm actually starting to get like really scared. That was the first time that I think I'd ever felt like real, real fear. I've been in all kinds of sketchy situations, both, you know, being in the band and all that, bar fights and the like, and all that other crazy stuff like that. But this was something, completely different. I felt like a little kid there's the monster in the closet. So, at this point, I'm like, I think I maybe need to just go ahead and get on out of here. And, uh, I try to start making sorry, man, I get a little freaked out, looking back and thinking about it, man. My adrenaline's going just thinking about it. Um, so at this point, I've got a Mossberg 590, the old 590 A1 with the bayonet lug. So I always carried one of the M9 bayonets with me, and I'm like, I don't know what this thing is. It's big. All I had was, the seven in the tube, and I didn't have a pistol or anything like that. All I had was the shotgun and the bayonet. I might have had a couple extra shells in my pocket. And at first, I'm like, of course, I'm like, am I going to have to start shooting this thing? I don't even know what it is. And, of course, gun safety kicks in. Be sure your target and watch behind it. So I start trying. I start trying to make my way back to where my boat was, and at the same time, it's following me, and eventually, after about a half hour of hearing this thing and seeing the movement of it, I realized that it's got between me and where my boat's at. It's got me pinned in inland, and it's slowly getting louder. I think it's started to figure out, this guy that's I might have been giving off the prey behavior, something trying to evade being, being attacked, that typical prey drive that dogs have. I'm feeling like it's probably kicking in with this thing. And after about a half hour of seeing movement and hearing it, and I realized that it was between me and my boat. And I did notice, though, that it seemed like it did not want to get in the water. That it was doing whatever it could to stay on the ground and not get in the water. So when I realized that, I just went in chest deep into the canal. My shotgun over my head, walking through the canals, trying to put as much distance between it and myself as I could. And eventually, I made it back out to the full body of water, and I had to walk probably a quarter mile through the sound, the big open body of water. I had to walk about a quarter mile through the sound to get back to where my boat was. And I'm freaked out. I'm scared. I'm soaking wet. It's starting to. I went in the woods about uh, probably between noon and 1. I think total I was back there like a couple of hours altogether. But fogs, as I was getting it back to my boat, fog was starting to roll in. It was starting to drizzle and mist a little bit. And I got back to, I got in my boat. I made back to my buddy's house, and my buddy, he's like, "What the heck is wrong with you, man?" And I was like, "Man, I saw something out there. I don't know what the heck it was." And it was like it followed me. It was growling and snuffling and pretty much tried to trap me off in there. And I guess I probably get to give a little bit of a better description of it. At most time, it was like it was hunched over, like it's on all fours, and it was probably 3 foot, 4 foot, hunched over. But at one point, uh, when I did the closest, best vision of it that I had, the best side of it I had was at one point it had been standing up. It's like standing up on two legs behind some trees and brush looking out at me. And it was probably between 6 and 7 feet tall. This thing was huge. So I get back to my buddy's house and I tell him, he's like, "What's wrong with you, man? I never seen you like this." And he took me inside and gave me a cup of coffee with a big slug of Jim Beam in it. And I was calmed down a little bit, and I told him where I was and what I saw, and he kind of, you know, he goes over pale. I was like, "Man, why did you go there?" And I was like, "Man, I'm just trying to, just trying to get in the swamp and have some fun, man, trying to kill some time." And he goes, "Hang on," and he takes me back to where his granddad. They've got a little bit of a compound back there. It's a whole big family that lives in this one area back there. They raise chickens and goats and pigs and all that. Typical Southern country folk. And he takes me out back to the house in the back where his granddad lives. And I was always scared to death of this guy's granddad. He was, kind of, he was always really standoffish, didn't act like he wanted to see anybody around, anybody that wasn't family or anybody else. And, it, I don't know why I felt that way. I just always did. But he takes me in to tell his granddad, what happened and what I saw. And he goes, "Don't ever go back in there again. You're lucky you made it out." And he said, "That's where the big dogs live." And I'm like, "Big dogs? What the heck does that mean?" And I thought he was just messing with me or something, because screwing with his grandson's buddy. And I asked him, I was like, "What do you mean the big dogs?" And he goes, "There's big dogs that live back in there." And I'm like, "Oh," it's like, that sure as heck wasn't any kind of dog I've ever seen. And uh, my buddy takes me back out and he lets me chill out for a little bit, cooks me something to eat, and I drove the hour back to my house where I lived, and I walked in at my girlfriend at the time. I'm soaking wet, filthy. She goes, what the heck happened to you?" I was like, "I don't even want to talk about it." And I think after that, I pretty much convinced myself that I just got worked up and that I was seeing things, and just hype myself up and freak myself out. There wasn't anything, you know. And I eventually forgot about it. And a couple of years ago, on just scrolling through YouTube, a Dogman video pops up in my feed, and I'm like, "Dogman, what the heck is that?" And it was an encounter that was very similar to what I experienced, and like that all came flooding back to memory. And and I kind of went down the whole Dogman rabbit hole thing, and looking back, because I hadn't thought about that in probably 15 years, since that happened. I'd completely left it behind. And so, like I said, I went down the whole Dogman rabbit hole, and I saw that, they're pretty common, in eastern North Carolina. There have been other sightings and attacks and everything like that. And then thinking back to when my buddy's granddad said that's where the big dogs live, I thought, okay, he wasn't messing with me. He knew some. I could tell that they all knew what they just didn't want to tell me. Yeah, you saw a big giant half dog, half man critter that would have probably killed you and ate you. I mean, for all I know, I have no idea. But yeah, there have been other. I think it's Beaufort, North Carolina. There was a woman that was killed down there. I remember reading about that. And yeah, his family knew what it was. They just kind of still kept it to themselves.
That happens a lot, man. Stephen, you're very fortunate, first of all, to be here to share that encounter because, Dogman's on a whole other level than Bigfoot, in my opinion. I think Dogman's they're just pure evil. And a lot of times you hear about these encounters where they'll pace people out and they'll scare them. And they call them, some people call them fear eaters because they live off of that or whatever they are. But when you saw it, when you had a clear vision of it, would you describe what it looked like in more detail if you can?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it was, overcast November and it's really dark in there. All I could really say is that I saw, a darker shape that was darker than the foliage around it and behind it. I never actually, I couldn't tell you any of the features of it. I couldn't, because I didn't think it was a dog. I didn't know what the heck a dog man was. It was just a very large shape that was making dog sounds and smelled like a dog. And if I think if it had been open ground, not the swamp like it was where I was at, I think it probably might have attacked me. And also there's some of the other people I've talked to about this. They said that it could have been a juvenile dog man, and it was just scoping me out. Because at the whole time it was going on, there was water between it and me, and it never got more than maybe 20, 25, 30 feet. And like I said, the brush is really dense and really thick back there, and you'll have a big open section of water and then the brush on top of that. So yeah, it was a very large, very dark, very pungent smelling animal critter. And looking back now, I think I don't know if there's something supernatural about them or not, but as soon as this encounter started, I felt crippling fear. It instilled a very, very primal fear response in me.
That's a pretty common response with these encounters. Yeah, I hear a lot of these things and go through them, and that's one of the things that's common in most of the Dogman encounters is just this tangible fear. Primal fear is a good way, I guess, to put it. Where and I think they thrive off of that. It's really strange because there's some encounters where maybe people get mauled or killed by these things, but I think the majority of them they just really like for you to be afraid for whatever reason. It makes me wonder why it didn't want to go near the water or in the water, and I think these things are supernatural. I think there's more to them than just flesh and blood, but your circumstances and having that encounter, you are very fortunate, and those things probably played in your favor, man. The swamp, the water, for whatever reason, not going in there, but it might sound like a strange question, man, but if you had the opportunity to see one again, would you want to?
Not unless I'm heavily armed and have buddies with me that are likely as heavily armed as I am. But no, I really don't ever want to see one again. And another thing that I guess I had another buddy of mine that lived in that same area up closer to where the Coast Guard Air Station is there. He lived out in the swamp too, and he had dogs. He had pit bulls, and a Rottweiler, big mean tough dogs, and they'd run into the swamp all hours of the day and night. But occasionally he'd let them out to go play or do their business, and they wouldn't leave the porch. His big tough dogs were giving off a heavy fear response too, and wouldn't and I was like, what is that, man? Well, he's like, oh, it's probably just a black bear or something like that out there. I'm like, dude, these are pit bulls, they're not afraid of a black bear.
No, not at all, man. Dogs kind of have that, that sense built into them, and they know when something is out there, a predator, and something that's bigger than they are. So I definitely agree with you. That wasn't a bear. Have you been back to that area since that encounter, or have you talked to those people since then?
No, I haven't. Well, I still stayed in touch with both of my friends from there after that. Uh, my the one guy where his family lived back there, he actually ended up getting killed in combat a couple of years after that. And my other buddy, he ended up moving out of that area. He lives out in Western North Carolina now and owns a tattoo shop out there. I think I think he might have seen some stuff and went through some stuff out there too, but not to the extent I did. But yeah, I haven't been back there, and I mean, I've been close to that area. I haven't gone into the woods or the swamp in that area since then. But I still like being in the outdoors and stuff. When I can now. It's far and in between because I'm so busy.
I understand that, man. And your buddy probably did. He probably had some encounters that he maybe won't doesn't want to talk about. And a lot of people move because of these things. And I talk to a lot of people that send me emails with these encounters, but they're like, please don't tell anybody. I need to get this off my chest. And it makes you wonder how many people are walking around with these stories and these encounters, man. And there's so many strange things in God's universe we don't understand. But I appreciate you being brave enough to come forward and to share that with my audience, man. That's a very scary encounter. How did that change your life? Once you kind of remembered it and realized all that stuff, how did that impact you?
I became much more uh, apprehensive of thinking about where I go out in the woods, and because when I found out about it, I was actually living in Asheboro, North Carolina, out there on the other side of the Piedmont. The beginning of the foothills and hill country. And my wife and we lived out kind of in the middle of nowhere. We had a neighbor a quarter mile up the road, and then there was a big farm. And I thought twice about going out into the deep woods there. If I was taking the dogs for a walk or whatever, I'd grab my 357 and put it on my hip if I was going to take the dogs way out in the woods there. And I also paid attention to their behavior too. Like if they start getting freaked out or sketched out about something, I'm going back.
That's a good way to be, man. That's always smart to do that. Anytime you go off in the woods, especially the deep woods, man, you need to be armed to the hilt. And then, having dogs with you is smart because they're going to indicate if something's not right, and that's really smart. I know for me, it's definitely changed the way I look at the woods. I hear these encounters all the time, and man, anytime I go out in the woods, man, my head's on a swivel because it just makes you wonder. I've had a couple of encounters with Bigfoot, and it's like once you know these things are there and they're real, it definitely changes you and changes your perspective on the woods. But I'm glad that you're able to go out there still and enjoy it because I love the woods, man. It's a good place to be. But with all that being said, man, and there, who knows what these things are? But what do you think they are, man? What do you think Dogman is?
I mean, that's something I I'm reluctant to believe that they're supernatural. I mean, back then I was a agnostic atheist. I wasn't a spiritual person at all. Back then I had I had a lot of stuff that I hadn't dealt with. from my childhood that made me not want to believe in God or things like that. But now as I've gotten older and I've seen a lot more, I'm a much more spiritually aware person. I try to live the way that Jesus would want me to live. Avoid conflict at all possible. I try to be spiritually aware of my behaviors and how I carry myself. So now, they might be some kind of supernatural being because, like you said, there's plenty of stuff in God's creation that we can't, we'll never be able to explain. You know, is it a flesh and blood creature? Yeah, I believe that. As far as any of the other of who or what it might be, I really don't know.
That's a good answer, man. And I'm the same way, man. I try to live under that in a biblical lens, man. That's how I look at things, and that's how I try to live my life. And very spiritually aware that there's more to this earth than just flesh and blood. But I think maybe when they're flesh and blood, they're flesh and blood. But there's a supernatural aspect to them. I think if you look at fallen angels and Nephilim, and you follow down that path, and it sounds weird coming out of your mouth, but they're basically, shapeshifters, and an angel can appear as something, and then, so a fallen angel can do the same thing. So I don't know what these things are. I know they're not good, and I tend to really believe that they are, fallen angels or Nephilim, but they're pure evil, man. And you're really fortunate to have made it out of that, that alive, and to be here to share it. And, I think a lot of us, it takes a while, especially us guys, for us to grow up and realize that there's more to life than just flesh and blood. And it takes a lot of guts to come forward and talk about that stuff. And I'm hoping with this channel, it'll help somebody else to come forward and share their encounters, because I think it could save a life someday. And then also, man, to talk about that trauma, it just helps to get that off your chest,
Yeah, it's this time telling it. This time was far easier than, when I made the Reddit post, and also when, I talked about it the last time. And, and you're right. There's, in the Bible, it says that the fallen angels, that they have, affronted beasts and man, that there could be, carryovers from those days, and people aren't going to talk about this, and that people don't talk about the weird and scary stuff that they see, because first, they don't want to be ridiculed, and they don't want people looking at them like they're crazy. I've reached a point in my life now where I really don't care. The only people that I care what think about me are my wife and my daughter and God. Those are the only people that I have to answer to as far as my behavior.
I'm right there with you, man. I feel the exact same way. And I think that, for me, it came with age, man. You get to the point where you just don't really care what people think anymore. I know what I saw, and it just makes me wonder how many people are walking around with these encounters and just not willing to talk about it. And hopefully, this will help them come forward. And you're right, man. The first time you say it, it's really hard. I remember the first time I shared my encounter, and I got, not made fun of, but you could tell they didn't believe you, man. It makes you question yourself. But yeah, but again, man, thanks for being brave enough to share that encounter. And I got one more question. What would you say to somebody listening to this podcast that is not a believer in these things? What would you say to them?
I just say, I hope you never have to find out otherwise.
We'll get back to the show in just a second, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for liking and watching this video. Would you guys consider being a member? I got all kinds of cool things coming down the pipeline. Lots of perks if you join and become members of this tribe. We're building a really cool community, so be a part of that, be a member. Let's just jump right back into the story. Thanks, guys.
I was a kid, about 12 years old, and my dad had a farm in Alameda County in Iowa. It's up in the northeast corner of Iowa. And his farm butts up to the Yellow River Forest, which there's a lot of recreational camping and stuff like that. And one day I was going to go out and check our traps up the top of the hill. We lived in kind of like in a valley, so it was flat, and then you had hills on both sides, but on the side where we trapped, it was a very steep hill with caves and things like that. So what I did was I waited until the fog kind of lifted and grabbed a 410 shotgun and headed out to go check traps. And you can't just walk straight up the hill, so I was making like a, what do they call it, cutback, going back and forth up the hill that way. And about the fourth time I did a cutback, I could see pretty good because the leaves had fallen from the tree and they were wet and they kind of pushed down anything green. So it's kind of like a layer of dead leaves. And I could see about 15, 20 feet ahead of me. I was going to be going in between a couple of trees that were close to the path. Didn't think nothing of it, just kept going and not paying that close of attention, I guess. And all of a sudden, boom, right in front of me, this huge fox lands. I don't know if it was in the tree. I don't know if it just jumped there. I don't know how it got there, but boom, right in front of me. And I had the shotgun and I put the shotgun up to my shoulder and I heard in my head, don't. And I pulled the trigger and I heard the words, shoot me. It's like, where? And I hit the fox. But when I hit him, I seen the hair fly, and he did like a jump up in the air, did a frontward somersault, and ran up that hill. I mean, we're talking over 100 yards. Like in 6 steps, he was gone. And he was running 2x2 pattern like a greyhound does, front feet and back feet together, you know. And his front feet, when they went back in that stroke, his feet, his front paws, were halfway down his tail. They were that long. And he was like peeling out, like throwing dirt up in the air as he was running, you know. And I couldn't even put another round in the chamber. I just stood there with my mouth open looking at it, wondering how I shot a fox and it's still running from that close with a 410, and it just kept on going. It took me about 10 minutes to get up to the top of that hill, and I had to use the weeds and stuff to pull myself up. And when I got up there, it just went about 30 feet and then went back down into a whole bunch more woods. So it was gone, long gone. So I told my dad about it, you know, and he told me I was full of it. I didn't shoot no fox. There ain't no fox that big. And I always kind of consider him like the hunting legend in that area, because he'd go out in the woods with a 22, come back about an hour or two later with 6 squirrels, and you never heard a sound. It's like the squirrels come down and say, hey, just knock me out, you know? But you never heard the gun going off or anything. And he said, if you sit someplace in the woods long enough, everything in the woods is going to walk by. And that's why he told me there wasn't a fox that big. I think he knew something that I didn't know. And I didn't know for a long time. Because after that, you know, my dad sold the farm and I went in the military and marriage and everything. And I mean, never gave it another thought. And of course, that was a time when there was no internet. You know, nobody's talking about it. They hadn't even barely started talking about the big footprint they found in California. You know, they hadn't even hardly started talking about that. The Patterson-Gimlin film hadn't, you know, been barely out or whatever. But yeah, that would have been right in 1967. So years in between that. We're talking from 67 to 2017. Never gave it another thought. I was always uncomfortable wherever I lived. I mean, I've lived in probably 25 houses up until the time I moved. This is my final house here. But probably 25 houses I've had, and I've always owned them because I've owned dogs. And nobody wants to rent to you when you own dogs, so you just might as well buy the house and forget about it. But as soon as I'm there, it seems like within 6 months, I'm uncomfortable. There's something about the house I don't like. And I never knew what it was. I just moved. I've been in North Carolina for 7 years, and I've owned 3 houses. So I was in Kansas City. I think I was in Kansas City 2 years, owned 2 houses. So it's just something that it just feels really uncomfortable. But I know what that is now. So I'm living in North Carolina. I'm going to work probably 7 more years, retire, you know, at that time. So I'm driving around my Z one day, and I'm on a blacktop road, and next to me there's a field that's been soybeans and it's been cut down already, and so it's pretty much dirt and a few weeds here and there. And I hear this voice says, "Hey, you want to see a Volkswagen microbus?" And it's familiar, but it wasn't familiar. And I said, "Yeah, sure." He said, "Look to your right." And I looked to the right, and there was Dogman. He's about on the other side of that field, so he's about a quarter mile away. He's on all fours, running about. He's got to be running at least 50, because I'm doing 70, and I'm not losing him, you know. And he's running along the side of that field, and I'm watching him drive along, and he cuts into those woods right there behind my house. So I get home, get in the driveway, put the car away, get a couple of guns, get one of my biggest dogs, and I head out to where I saw him running along the side of the field. And as I'm walking out there, I'm thinking, if he's real, there'll be evidence. If he's not real, I'm going crazy. If he's real, I am crazy for being out here walking. Go find him. But anyway, as I walk out there, and that he hit a tree branch with his backside. And so I went to that tree branch, and that's where I started my looking for tracks. No tracks, not a single track. But that branch was like 5 foot off the ground, and it hit him in the back. So he was over 5 foot on all fours. So I went, started heading back across the field to my house. And I thought, well, he's had to leave evidence. I'm not crazy. I know I saw him. I know I heard him. And that brought me to the whole thing about mind speak that I had to learn rapidly, because you can't have something like that talking in your head. And that's what he does. It's mental telepathy. So, and they use it on everything. And so I'm thinking about that. And I said, evidence, got to be. So I stopped about in the middle of that field, and I start doing the police tactic of walking around in circles, spiraling around, a few more feet, round and around, round and around. And about the 20th time around, I find about a 10 by 10 spot where it looks like a deer had a war. There's wolf prints, deer prints, deep in it, this way, that way, and antler prints. It's like, man, they must be rutting or something. And which I don't think it's time for the rut at that time. Maybe it was. And so I'm standing there looking at this spot there. What took place here, trying to put it back together. And I see one little piece of greenery about yay tall. And it's about this big around. And it looks like there's an indent on the side of it, because it's probably about 3 foot to my left. And I don't want to make any more footprints, so I just kind of turn, bend over, pick it up, and there's his track. There's his front paw. And it's about 4 or 5 inches into the dirt. I mean, we're talking a dog footprint about yay big. 4 toes down in. So what he did is he pushed off 4 toes, big toenails about yay long. Tried to take a picture of it, but they don't turn out. I'm not a forensic kind of guy. And so I just kind of watched my back and went on back to my house. And as I'm going back to my house, I'm telling myself, I'm thinking, okay, so how's this mental telepathy thing? How's this mind speak? So I just said in my head, like I'm thinking the thought, show me your eyes. I hear you have interesting eyes. Show me your eyes. And I went home. Didn't think about it again for a couple of weeks, back and forth to work, mowing the lawn, everything. And I usually get up, go to the restroom about 3 o'clock in the morning. And about 2 weeks after I saw his track, about 2 weeks, and I got up, went to the bathroom, and just something popped in my head, look out the window. And the window on the side of my house between me and the neighbor, probably 15 foot, and it goes back to the backyard. I can't see my backyard. I can see his backyard. And I can see the trees, the tree line where the Dogman went in is back there. And I look out the window and nothing. And then here's a little fog bank. It's probably 3 feet thick, 8 feet wide, and it comes out of the woods, comes right through the trees and everything, and it stays together, and it's probably about 12, 15 foot long, and it comes across the neighbor's corner of their yard, in between our 2 houses, and I'm in the second story window, looking down, and it stops probably 15 feet in front of me. And then, boom, 2 lights come on. Remember the old light bulbs that had the old cheap 99-cent light bulb that had a plastic frame? They were yellow from day one. His eyes remind me exactly of those flashlights. You know, you see those flashlights in the woods, it ain't somebody playing with antique flashlights. I can tell you that. But so they come on, and I said, wow. He goes, here I am. Here's my eyes. I said, okay. I said, if you're Dogman, I said, close an eye. And one light went out. And then a couple of seconds, it came back on. I said, oh, well, you're Dogman. Close both eyes. And he goes, I'm not here to play your effing parlor games. Must tell me he's been around talking about parlor. We haven't talked about parlor games since Scrooge. But anyway, so we had a conversation, and I went on to bed and went on about my life, because now I know he's here, and I know why he's here. You know, he swore revenge on me after I shot him, and his fur around his neck is some kind of band of royalty or something, because it's not the same as other dogmen. Other dogmen usually have, like, it's almost like a lion's mane, but it's all black, and it's black, and they can make it shimmer.
Could you explain to us, when you put that correlation together, that supposed fox, you know, which you thought was a fox at the time, was the same creature that was basically stalking you and told you that? I know in the email you explained that, but why don't you tell our audience how you put that two together and how you found out that this was the same creature that had, you know, basically sworn vengeance on you for shooting it all those years ago?
You know, after, you know, getting through the shock that I'm communicating something, right? It's not like, oh, hey, let me get a cup of coffee and we'll have a chat. No, it's like, oh my God, am I crazy? That's why I had to find evidence to prove to myself that everything that was going on with me is real. And I proved myself to that many times throughout my life that, yeah, that was real, you know, and there we go again. This is real. And so I had to accept it. I couldn't tell myself, don't believe your lying eyes. You didn't see that. And that's one of the tricks, that as he was running up the hill, first time I saw him and shot him, it comes back to me, little bits and pieces. The whole ordeal comes back to me, but like the little pieces of like what I heard and everything. After he told me that he told me not to shoot him, he kept saying, and I kept hearing in my head, you don't remember this, do you? You don't remember this, do you? So, and I think that's what a lot of people get mind speak with Sasquatch or with a dog man. They put suggestions into your head, and you think it's yourself. And he even told me that you know, he's all about the scare. And when they make things go quiet around you in the woods, he said he does that so that you'll start thinking, why is everything so quiet? What's going on? And start putting that fear in you, start ramping up that fear because you're talking. And then he joins the conversation in your head and scares the crap out of you in the woods, is what he told me. But we had a conversation to the point where once I realized who he was, and I'd seen enough pictures on the internet that I even know what he looks like now, because there's a picture out there that fits him really good. And I mean, it's just like, oh, it takes me back, because, you know, I may talk like I got this all under control, but without Jesus, I ain't got none of this under control. I didn't have it under control. All the time that I saw when I was a kid and grew up, I drank and did drugs my whole life till about 20 years ago. And 20 years ago, I found the Lord, or he found me, one or the other. Anyway, he came by and talked to me. I put cameras in my backyard because they don't want to be seen on the camera. So that's how I keep them out of my backyard, is I have game cameras up, and it seems to work. But what really protects my yard and my house is the blood of Jesus Christ. I mean, that's my house has been blessed and washed from the blood of Jesus Christ, because I didn't think about the roof until after the incident that I wrote down there for you. So I moved to another house in North Carolina, and one night a big panel of the fence. I mean, it wasn't windy or anything, just big panel of the fence, like flew, bam, something hit it, flew off. And that right there was a little kind of a warning to me. I can't come on your property, but I know where you live, right? So I moved from there, and now I'm in this house, and this is my permanent house. This is my last one. I mean, I prayed on that a lot, and this is it. I told him, this is it. I won't let him talk anymore, but I know he hears me. I know he does, and so I won't let him talk. He's deceitful, very deceitful. But he told me that he kept tabs on me every place I was at in the country, because they talk to each other like almost like a computer sister saying, "Hey, you seen Rick? Yeah, he's over there." And then boom, you seen Rick? Yeah, he's over there. And then brings the information back to him, tells Dogman where I'm at, and they can travel quite a ways. The first thing that made me think about Dogman is I was watching a podcast, and this hunter said that he was next to a river, and of course the river's making noise. So he said he saw a Dogman walk up to the edge of the river and jump and land about 50 to 75 yards on the other side of the river on the side of a tree, and then jump from there like another 25 yards and stuck it on a tree laying down like a gymnast. I mean, just boom, boom, just like it's natural to them. So I think they could travel quite a ways in one day. And so I moved from there down here. This is my final house. You're supposed to have your backyards all trimmed nice and neat. Our neighbors got jungle back there. And I put game cameras up there, and there's some stuff going on. I got lights that flew through my yard, like it looks like a long strip with things on top, and it's flying through the yard. And I got them flying through the trees. I got an orb coming through the trees, and so I know there's a lot of crazy stuff going on right here in my own backyard. And I was sitting here. Well, before that happened, I was remodeling this house, gutted the whole thing. I put a camper in my backyard and was living in a camper. Me and my wife and 5 dogs in this pull behind camper. Had a couple slide outs. Still not much room in there. But I fell asleep on the little couch watching TV. And about 3 o'clock in the morning, that tune "Shaving a Haircut"? My head was like back this on the couch. My head was on the wall. And right behind my head, because I felt the vibration, it went, holy camole. That's a way to wake you up, because you're just sleeping. Then you got to think, what was that? Is it real? I felt it. Oh, man, it's real. Get a gun, And I always have a gun by the door because, they like dogs. And if one of them gets a hold of my dog, I got to go to protect my dog. I mean, so I'm always prepared. And so the time from when I was a kid and shot that stupid fox to the time that he asked me if I wanted to see a Volkswagen microbus, we're talking over 50 years. We're talking 57 years for in between. And he was following me everywhere, and I didn't know it. Never seen him ever. And he said he was there because he said it was great when I went back up there where my dad's farm was, because when I was about in my 20s, late or early 30s, we used to ride our Harleys up there and camp, and drink a lot of beer and be crazy. And he said he was there. He was there. And I don't doubt him because I was there. But now I found out that he follows me everywhere. And I was sitting here, before I protect my house and property in the blood of Jesus Christ, I got to tell you, this is what really freaked me out. I was sitting right here where I was sitting, right here by my computer, and I was on the phone with a friend of mine in Iowa. And man, something hit the roof right above my head. It's a 1-story house. Hit the roof right above my head, and I hit hard because my buddy goes, "What was that?" I go, "Something just landed on the roof." He goes, "What is this, Christmas?" I said, "No, listen." And that thing, started above my head and walked in a zigzag pattern across the roof all the way to the other end of the roof. And it's like, I just sit here, I was like frozen, just listening to it. Because he's usually really, I mean, he was making noise, boom, boom. And it was only like maybe 4 steps, and he was at the peak of the roof. 4 steps, he was on the other side, and then back across. And when I finally got a hold of myself to go outside, he wasn't there. I'll tell you, I got some game camera pictures that, like that fog that I was talking about. I got a little tree in my backyard, and there's one picture, there's nothing there. The next picture, there's a bank of fog just around that tree, around the leaves, not above or below. When he showed me his eyes, we had 2 more talks. I was in my kitchen, and he knew that I put a camera up. And then after seeing him, I knew what I was dealing with, and I was just sucking in all the information I could find. What is this thing? Why is this thing? And that's why I say I don't care if it's here before me. I don't care if it's made in a lab. I don't care if it's whatever. I don't care how it got here. This thing is the apex predator on this planet. It'll rip a Bigfoot to shreds. I mean, this thing, double rows of teeth, fangs, and freeze you with infrasound. This thing is like got supernatural abilities, like we're finding out about Bigfoot now, and we can't comprehend all the things that this dog man can do. And so when I finally figured it out, I don't really go into the woods, but I don't want to think I'm afraid either, because you never let them see you sweat, right? So it's really every day. I have to tell you this, Jeff. Every day I think about it. I think about him. I think about seeing him. I think about him trying to talk to me, through mind speak. He's out there, and there's nothing I can do about it until he tries to get revenge. Because he said that his family kicked him out because when he was healing, he was running his yapper about how he was going to take his revenge out of me. He didn't know my dad was going to sell the farm, and I was going to go into the Marines and start my own life. He didn't know all that. But he said he's been following me all over the country. Every house that I've been in, there's woods somewhere, and plus I think they're like Bigfoot, where they can just blend in. They just like take on the perception or the texture and the look of leaves. And I mean, it's like a bunch of leaves with eyeballs. That's why a lot of times they don't have their eyes open, because that's what, as humans, we recognize. When we see somebody in the woods, what do we see? We see their eyes. But these guys, they'll keep their eyes closed.
Usually one of the first questions I ask somebody who comes on my show is after an encounter, how did that affect your life? But you've pretty much answered that, man. This has been a lifelong, endeavor, and knowing that this thing is for whatever reason, tried to get revenge on you and has done this to you and tortured you like that. Because that is torture, knowing that thing's out there, man. How do you live your daily life knowing that thing is there, man?
I'm going to tell you exactly where I was at when he showed himself to me again here in North Carolina. I thought, okay, I'm safe, I'm free. But when he showed himself to me in North Carolina, I was in a good place in my heart with Jesus. Very good place. So in between that time, I tried drinking it away. I tried drugging it away. A very unhappy person, a very violent person. I mean, just living a crappy life, because I don't know why. I don't know why I always feel uncomfortable. As soon as I move into a house, I want to move out in less than 6 months. And I bought the place, so I got to figure out a way to manipulate my VA loan to get out of this one and into another one. Lots of times. And I don't know why, until he showed himself to me. And then it became very obvious when he said, just like a computer, we can follow you anywhere. They're just The only thing that gets me through the day right now, and has been for probably 20 years, last 20 years, what's been getting me through, and he's come back into my life during this time, my faith and my belief in Jesus Christ. That's the only thing, because I tried drugs, I tried drinking, I tried, you name it, I'll try it. And then why not try Jesus? Whoa, man, I feel good now. I know he's out there, but if he gets me, I just get to be with Jesus a little bit sooner.
I think that is the absolute best answer that anybody can have to any situation that they're going through is, try Jesus, because that is the best thing you could do. And I believe that's what's kept you safe all these years, is the blood of the Lord, and that's a very powerful statement, and you're very smart to have, turned to him, because I think that's what's kept you safe. And, this is one of the most unique encounters I've heard. I've heard several times that Dogman will follow you home and follow people, things like that. But for this thing to follow you everywhere, that's pretty incredible. Why don't you describe for our audience what this thing looked like? I know as a kid you probably didn't know anything about Dogman and thought it was a fox, but why don't you describe what it looked like?
Well, when I first saw him, and I saw a side view of him, and I think about it a little bit, he had almost like a profile of a buffalo, big hump, but his arms are so much longer. And when he stands up, his arms are attached high, and when he comes down, it makes his arms all the longer. His forearm is way longer than like his upper arm, like ours in proportion. His would be way longer, and ours would be short, and his is short up here. But it's attached up here, like up higher. And he does that run 2x2. And when he was running up the hill, I could see the length of his claws were probably 3-4 inches, because when he was running, the dirt and the leaves was just flying like he was peeling out all the way up that hill. And that's why I didn't even chamber another round. I was in just shock, because I had no idea that I was going to shoot a fox and wouldn't kill him. And of course there was some blood and hair there, but it looked like he had a red fox head, and it almost looked cartoonish with a really long nose. Almost looked cartoonish, and maybe that was by his design. But it looked around his neck. You ever see like the king, his robe with the white fur with the speckles around there? That's what he had around like his neck area. It was almost like a robe, and then the rest of him was black. And when I saw him, like he was trying to be a bus, of course he had the reddish face, which I could see from where I saw him from. But around his neck, now he had spread that out to where like his whole front was that cream colored fur with spots on it, and then the rest of him was still black. And so I think that's his unique feature is he's got this like royalty around his neck, and that's why he's got to uphold his swearing revenge on me, is because he's some kind of royalty.
Yeah, I'm sure that you didn't really know what to do with that when you put all that together and realized, what was out there and, what was after you.
Well, in that time, there was no internet. Your point of reference is an encyclopedia in the dining room that's already 10 years old, or your old man wouldn't have bought them. And yeah, you want to know something? Go look in that book. That book, I'll tell you, I'm a firm believer of what the CIA director said when they first started the CIA. Our job will be done when everything we tell you, you believe, and everything we tell you is a lie. That's what he said. When you believe everything we tell you, our job's done, because everything's going to be a lie.
And unfortunately, I think they've done a really good job, because there's so many people walking around with their eyes closed and not really knowing that these things are out there, and that they, they're real, and people are seeing them, and they're doing a lot of different strange stuff. I know you said it spoke to you the second time, I guess, years later when you saw it on the side of the highway. Did it sound like it was, obviously it wasn't good, but What did it sound like when the mind speak happens? What does it sound like?
Well, when you think a thought, like I think, and I just said in my head, I'm going to say this to Joshua, and the way you talk inside your head, the way you run thoughts, it's the same process, except the voice is different. And, and you learn whose voice is who. Because I know when Jesus speaks, and I know when Dogman speaks, and those are about the only two. I know uh, this stuff is crazy, but think about it. We've been working on what telepathy and the mind stuff and was it remote viewing, mind control. I can tell you some other time we'll talk offline. I'll tell you some stuff about mind control that'll solve a lot of mysteries for you. Because do you ever notice everybody in Washington's got a handler? Why do they have a handler? Can't they walk to the bathroom by themselves, or what's going on? Right? Everybody's got a handler. I'll tell you a story about that sometime.
I definitely want to learn as much as I can, and would love to hear that story. There's so much in God's universe that we don't understand. And I will tell you, once you get introduced to this world, whether it's an encounter or, just interested, it's a really deep rabbit hole, and there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of answers. And I think that's by design. We're seeing things that maybe aren't supposed to be here. Or they're just kind of, we don't understand. But I know that you're really fortunate, Rick, to be sitting here telling this story. When was the first time that you told anybody, man? And how long did it take you to talk about it?
Well, I was already down here when I figured it all, put it all together, with the feelings and moving and, and all the crazy things I'd done throughout my life and the daredevil things I'd done, like having no fear of dying and because it was like a feeling of hopelessness inside you down deep. But, you got to put on this show for the rest of the world where, you're married and got kids and, like Joe Walsh says, you pick up the dog poop on Saturday and you mow. And, I mean, that kind of world. And then deep inside of me, I'm thinking, why am I here? Why am I here? And I could never figure it out. And there's not enough beer in the world to make it go away. And so when he showed himself to me as VW Bus, it came flooding in on me like, oh my God, that's why he's there. He's been everywhere. And he tells me little things. Oh, you remember this? You remember? He was there.
I think these creatures are definitely all over the place. I had somebody come on one of the lives the other day and ask if they were in Ohio, because I think they had heard that they weren't there. And I think they're everywhere, man. I think they're absolutely everywhere. And I don't know how this thing kept tabs of you all those years, but the roof incident that you talked about with your buddy, is that the last time you've heard it or had an encounter with it?
That's the last time. That's been maybe a year now. But during this year time, I was sick for a while. See, here's what I think. I think he landed right above me on purpose because I think they have like that camera can see through walls and see the heat signature on the other side. They've got to have some incredible eyesight because that's why we can't photograph them because they see the infrared. They see the field of the infrared where the camera's covering. So they just walk around it, because it's not going to trigger the camera. So I think they do infrared and I think they do color. I think they do black and white. I don't think they have a heat signature. I think they have it, but they don't know what it is exactly. They think it's just us glowing. But I think it's a heat signature vision they have as well. These things are got supernatural powers, and they're not made from God. I tell you that.
I think these things are pure evil, and they're definitely not part of the good side of things for sure. And they scare me way more than Bigfoot does because I think. Bigfoot, I think you can have lots of different opinions about that, but everybody that I've talked to that's had an encounter with Dogman, they walk away with the same experience of just fear, pure fear. And you brought up something earlier. You said that it told you that it jumped out at you because of the fear, wanted to scare you. And do you think they just live and thrive off of fear? You think that's something that they're made for?
Yeah, he told me that until they get the okay to, he's following me around until he gets the okay from whoever on heavenly high is going to give them the okay to take out a third of mankind. And they're going to be part of that, taking out a third of mankind. And he said, I'm going to be his first customer. But anyway, I think they're so evil. He told me himself that until they get that okay, it's all about the scare. It's all about the scare. And then you've heard people say in their stories, and then he smiles, gives that big grin. He's never given me that big grin because I told him where I stand. I'm on the side of the Lord, and I'm coming with a slug.
Well, that's a good thing to do, man. I think if you're doing that, you're going to be all right because, these things don't have any power because, when you're covered by the blood, there's nothing they can do. And I firmly believe that you're going about this the right way and you're doing it the right way, man. And I just, I definitely would have my head on a swivel and all that. What do you think these things are? What's your opinion on that?
I think they're pure demonic. I think it's something that even if man had a hand in making them, I think they were formed somewhere either with Satan's hand involved or with mankind. And I think what we did was we was putting them here and there, just a couple, to see what would happen, like in different countries. And I think they got so powerful, we couldn't contain them. And they let them go. Now they're out in the wild breed. Yeah.
That would definitely make sense to me, and I could see how that's, the government could be involved in some way, shape, or form. I know a lot of guys that I talk to, they're out researching, and they have government vehicles show up on their property and tapping their phone lines and all kinds of stuff like that. So I think they know about them. Now, what their role is with it, I don't know, but they definitely know about these creatures, and I think they probably have a pretty significant role with them somehow. With that, and all that being said, but
I've talked to some hunters, guys that say they're out hunting Bigfoot, Dogman, the Rake, all these creatures, right? And they all got the same thought on killing one. You won't want to be the first one to kill one because it ain't come to the surface yet. So you're going to be the first and bring it to the surface? I don't think so. I don't think so. They're going to bury you beneath some corner of a building somewhere. I mean, they're just not going to let you out. So what are you going to do?
I think that's a good point, and that's kind of where we're at in this world is that, I think that the evidence is there, but if you take that shot and you bring one of these things down, you try to bring it forward, I don't think you're going to be around very long. I just don't. If you're lucky enough to shoot one and make it out alive in that situation, because I think if you see one, there's another one really close by. B, I think the government's going to take you out. That's just my opinion, because they don't want people knowing these things are out there. And, what would you say to somebody who does not believe in Bigfoot or Dogman or cryptids? What would you say to them?
I would ask them, how's your relationship with Jesus Christ? They say, well, I don't have one. I said, that's a good place to start. You better get right with God because you never know the day he's coming. And look at all the things going on in our world right now. That's what made me come on your show with this message, is because Jesus has told me the end's not for everybody. He said that, you got to get your message out there and give it to people who believe. Get the people off the fence. Because he said, anybody sitting on the fence when I come, he goes, I'm pushing them in with Satan. So if you're on the fence, Jesus said there'll be no mercy this time. You're on the fence, you're done. So he's telling me, when I do meditation and prayer, he's telling me, get the message out. Which message? All messages. And I tell you, when I was a conspiracy theorist, I got tons of topics. And I don't want to do all those, but I do this Dogman thing. This is something that I would be derelict if I hadn't have told my son there's monsters in the woods. And of course, he don't believe me because him and his friends are out in the woods all the time. I said, okay, look at it this way, son. I said, just know that they're out there. I said, because when you guys are out in Colorado doing your hiking and stuff, I said, you come around a bend in the trail and there's a 12-foot tall Bigfoot standing there. I said, you'll be the only one that don't pee your pants.
What a strange world we live in. I say it all the time, but there is so much in God's universe we just do not understand. And every time I hear these episodes, I always walk away with way more questions than I do answers. But I hope you guys are enjoying the channel, and I appreciate everybody that's out there, all the members and all the support. And I hope you guys are just enjoying this as much as I am. But, you know, the reason I say stay prayed up so much is because with these kind of things out there, it's so important that you do that. And that is the one thing, man, that will always keep you safe is the name of Jesus. So I never hide my faith on this channel, and I never will. But thanks for being here. If you've got a mystery you would like to send me, please send it to me at mysteriesunknownpodcast@gmail.com. That's the lifeline of the show, guys. I couldn't do that with all the people brave enough to come forward with these encounters. But I'm very appreciative of everybody. Thanks for hanging out with me tonight. You know I'm going to say it. Stay prayed up. We'll see you in the next episode.